Hi, I'm Laura Rolfe, host of Powered by Franchising and CEO of Mint Franchise Consultants. I have gotten to know my guest today very well. We have gone on a cruise together. I visited their franchisee in Scottsdale, Arizona. We just got off Discovery Day for Franchise Consultants last week. So excited to talk everything about Benjamin Franklin Plumbing and Authority Brands on today's show. So welcome to the show, Tommy.
Thank you, Laura. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so we've gotten to traverse the country together, and I've learned a lot about Benjamin Franklin Plumber and you and your family. You're coming to us from Memphis, Tennessee, correct?
Correct. Home of the blues and good barbecue.
Oh, I love a good barbecue. Well, wanted to learn a little bit. Let's start by learning about you and how you got your start in franchising, Tommy.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of an interesting story. So I am a long time advertising individual. So spent I think 27, 28 years in advertising, dating myself a little bit. So, time in Yellow Pages, worked in television, worked in digital for a while, basically like a director of sales. Um, Corporate refugee is how I describe myself. So anytime you're dealing with legacy media companies, you're going through a lot of transition, private equity acquisitions, turnover and things like that. And interestingly enough, I was actually working with a franchise consultant like yourself on potentially opening my own business when I just so happened to meet the chief development officer at ServiceMaster. And he said, "Why don't you come work for me doing franchise development?" And funny thing was, I took that job thinking I'm going to do this for a couple of months to learn everything there is to learn about franchise development, then open my own concept. And 5 years later, here I still am. So, but I truly have loved what I'm doing, and I think I probably still will open my own franchise someday. But I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now. So it's kind of a circular way to get into the franchising business. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So,
Old school
what was
marketing
it
guy.
that appealed to you about franchise development and franchise sale? I mean, it's not that big of a departure, I think, from advertising sales. You're talking about the value of
Yeah.
investing in a franchise instead of investing in the Yellow Pages, which I don't have anymore, but
Yeah,
I
I mean,
remember them.
it was an easy transition for me. Anytime you're a legacy person in business development, like I say, to jump from Yellow Pages to digital to television, right? It's all transferable skills. It's just the product is changing. So no different than franchising, right? Like how could I get into a plumbing company? Well, it's the same transferable skills that you probably are using every day in your job. It's just, you're changing the product. So it was actually kind of a natural transition for me. And the thing I love about this job is there's no monotony to it. So in the advertising world, you're dealing with the same clients over and over and over again. And in this space, I talk to somebody in a different part of the country literally every hour, and they're coming from all walks of life and backgrounds. And it's like you're kind of helping people achieve their dream state. So there's like a personal satisfaction in that to some degree. So it doesn't get monotonous like I think a lot of jobs do. So I've really enjoyed what I've been doing.
Yeah, I love talking to just all different kinds of people who are aspiring entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
learning their why. What is it about investing in a franchise and becoming a business owner that's appealing, and why franchising versus, as you said, you're looking at, maybe someday owning your own company that's an independent. So, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Benjamin Franklin Plumber and what makes it appealing to candidates looking at business ownership?
Yeah. So the funny thing about this, I'm sure when you talk to people, and I know when I talk to people, most of the folks I talk to don't come from a trades background and they have no experience in any type of trade whatsoever. And it's kind of like plumbing. Wow, that's okay. That's an interesting concept, right? But I always tell folks, let me talk about the industry first, because I think you need to love the industry before you love Ben Franklin Plumbing. And the cool thing about plumbing is that it generally checks every box that somebody's looking for in a business, and they just don't think of it. So, the cool thing about this is you're definitely dealing with this recession resistant, pandemic resistant business, right? We're doing residential and light commercial service repair and install. So if your toilet's not working or your water heater's out, it gets repaired. It doesn't really matter what's going on in the economy. The new buzzword is going to be, I think, AI resistant. This
Mm-hmm.
certainly checks that box. We don't compete against e-commerce or anything like that. So if you're looking for stability for the future, you certainly can't get any more stable than plumbing. Some other things that people love about this, there's no seasonality to it. So there's so many of these businesses out there that get into ancillary service lines because they're trying to bridge down seasons. You don't see that in plumbing. You'll see 12 months of equal revenue opportunity. And it's also like a cash business. So anytime a plumber comes to your house, it's generally cash, check, or credit card at time of service. So we don't run any type of invoicing or accounts receivable or billables or things like that. So that's a really nice piece to it. A lot of people are adverse to cold calling, and you certainly, have to market and solicit in this business, but not in a sense of I'm not knocking on doors going, "Hey, can I fix your plumbing today?" So it's a lot of direct to consumer type marketing, and then we're responding to a need to service, and then we're certainly selling in the house, but it's a little bit more of like community involvement versus, solicitation is how I describe it. And that appeals to a wide range of people. um, Very scalable. So it's a very simple, footprint. If you want to scale your revenue, it's as simple as adding a technician and a truck, and you just, you scale from there and work out of that base infrastructure. So you don't have a lot of cash intensity when you're trying to scale. And then ultimately, these things you can get as big as you can get as you want to go. There's a lot of concepts out there. There's just a limit to how big you can get. But in our system, you'll see, the average person generates about 3 million in gross annual revenue. The first quartile guys can get up in the 7 million range. And then even the ones that are, the biggest in the system may be up there in that 15 to $18 million range. And then, that's not even scratching the surface on starting to then pair it with, HVAC or electrical or something like that, where you can double or triple your revenue stream out of the same footprint. So those are generally things that I talk to people about, and they say, "Well, what's bad about this?" And I'm like, "It's plumbing. It it ain't sexy. If like
No.
you're in this for vanity, or if you're in this for the cool factor, this does not check that box." Um, so it's a blue collar business. It's a warehouse type environment. But there's some good to that too. I always tell people, there's definitely a down to earthness about the employees in these businesses, and they're really family oriented type businesses. They definitely don't have that like corporate America feel that a lot of people are trying to get away with or get away from. But certainly it's certainly not a sexy business from a vanity perspective.
Yeah, well, but the millionaire next door is in those dirty businesses. So,
100%. Yeah,
so you said a lot of people
100%.
who
Cash
love,
before cool. That's what I say.
yeah, well, cash is cool in my book. So you said a lot of people don't have trades experience
Yeah.
that you talk to. So you don't have to be a plumber to own a Benjamin Franklin plumbing franchise. What kind of experience do you need to own a
Yeah.
successful franchise?
The cool thing about this industry is most of the time the demand is outweighing the supply. So if you think of your personal experiences of when you tried to find a plumber, you pick up the telephone, you start dialing, they're not answering the phone. When you do get somebody, they don't come out for a couple of days, right? So what you're really doing here, this is all about team building and building an operation that can kind of meet that demand. The number one skill set I see is just people managers. So I tell folks, the ability to build a team, recruit, interview, hire, but then you understand how to create a culture that attracts and retains talent. That's my number one skill set. And I always say, there's a little bit of an asterisk in there, blue collar DNA in your body somewhere. And just what I mean by that is most all my owners are, in slacks and a golf shirt, but they can certainly walk into their shop and have interactions and relate to their team. So it's just, that human element to it. Beyond that, you see some things like, operational management. So you've got trucks in the field, call taking, dispatch, and inventory. So I certainly see people that have come out of like logistics, um, operations managers, restaurants, believe it or not, because a lot of that dynamic is similar. You're coordinating a lot of moving parts to drive like efficiencies in a restaurant. And then there is a sales dynamic to this in the house. Um, Plumbers are commissioned sales reps. A lot of people don't realize that. So when a plumber's in your house, they're incented to upsell, cross sell, get that fourth call in today instead of that third call because there's a commission component in there. So it's the ability to look at your analytics and say, I've got this technician is converting at an 80% clip and this technician is converting at a 40% clip. I probably have some type of a training issue in the house here in terms of like soft skill. uh, we're going to hire people that know how to do the technical aspect. So it's more about managing that team and driving those efficiencies is really the transferable skill set there.
Well, when I visited with you and your Scottsdale franchisee, I saw how that training is translated to the sales team or the plumbers who are the technicians.
Right.
How they're really good at going out and fixing that leaky faucet or changing out a toilet or things like that. But they were talking. The coach was talking to them about some of the main objections that you would
Yep.
hear if have you considered adding a water softener to your house? Or looks like you have some corroded pipes from all of the calcium buildup. Can I give you a quote for that? So you're talking in not a salesy way, but just how do you think
Yeah.
about adding additional services that would be a benefit to your client, and then also incentivize your plumbers?
100%. We put them through a 2-day course right out of the gate. It's called Blended Service Core, and it's everything customer interaction. So we're teaching the technicians, how do we park the truck? How do we then greet and engage that customer at the door? How do we walk them through what their problem is and the solution to that problem? How do we quote the pricing? We'll teach when possible, a good, better, best solution. That way people feel like they're have choices. People have a propensity to pick the middle one. So you've got a little bit of an upsell built in there, right? And what you saw was, I think they were role playing how to overcome the 7 most common objections that they face in the house. And you'll see technicians that can drive a lot more revenue out of their particular truck, or like I say, motivated to get on that fourth call or fifth call in a day because they're getting a percentage of what they're billed versus going as slow as I can go just to make the clock tick. But that's one of the beauties of the franchise system is we're going to teach all that. We actually own an affiliate company. It's called Success Academy. And I tell people the easiest way to picture that is picture any job in your organization built out. Maybe it's a manager, maybe it's a plumber, maybe it's a call taker or a dispatcher, but you'll sign them up for the training, hire a new dispatcher. They go through, I think it's a 5-course curriculum over how to do dispatching in the system. But the plumbers, yes, there's technical training in there, but the more important piece is really that soft skill piece that we just talked about. So somebody coming into this industry that doesn't know that, great. I don't need you to know it. I just need you to sign your team up, and my team's going to come out there and train that. I just need you to drive the efficiencies, once we've got the system implemented.
Yeah, so definitely team building
Yeah.
and creating a culture of people wanting to be engaged. The employees were high-fiving each other, really engaged with each
Yeah.
other. Tuck your shirt in. So your core values are listed there in the warehouse, and then there's a
Right.
picture of how to look professional and dress the part of Benjamin Franklin, and the team supports that. Everybody in the company shares in that culture.
Yeah, 100%. We're definitely designed to be a little bit of a different experience. Like you saw the uniformed employees, they put the shoe covers on when they come in the house. Everything's warranted and guaranteed. We have the punctuality guarantee where, we go to market as Benjamin Franklin, the punctual plumber. If there's any delay, it's you we pay. So we guarantee you we're going to be on time for our service call. If we're not, we'll refund you $5 for every minute that we're late, up to a $300 maximum. And so that's not the experience that the average consumer has when they engage with a plumbing company. We'll do some things around club membership. So, you get people to join the Benjamin Franklin Society. And once a year, we're going to come out to your house and we'll flush your water heaters for you and we'll do a whole home inspection. And then because you're a member of the club, when you do need me, you're going to get a discount on services. You're going to get scheduling prioritization. And so that gives us the ability to proactively get in those houses once a year and maybe generate some revenue opportunities. I'm the guy that had the water heater rust out and caused $35,000 worth of flood damage in the house. I wish
Wow.
somebody would have been going upstairs and inspecting my water heaters on an annual basis. But so those are some things that we do that are just not your traditional experience in the plumbing space.
Right. So I'm looking at franchises. I am interested in Benjamin Franklin, but I have no experience in plumbing. So we got to hear from one of your contractors that helps
Yeah.
franchisees find a licensed plumber to be part of their franchise system. Why don't you talk about licensing with Benjamin Franklin?
Yeah, you get that question all the time. Well, don't I have to be licensed? Well, yeah, if you're going to be a plumber, but you're not going to be the plumber. You're the owner of the business, right? We're going to hire licensed plumbers. Most states will have different rules and requirements, but most of them just will say the business needs to operate under the supervision of someone who holds what's commonly referred to as a master plumbing license. A lot of different states will use different verbiage and things like that, but you and I could be what they call apprentices tomorrow. It just means we're trainees and we're under somebody's tutelage. And then most technicians, once they've accumulated, let's say 3, 4 years of in-field experience, they become what's called journeymen. That's typically who we're hiring out of the gate. I need them when they're in the field to be able to do anything technical. I don't need them calling you for technical advice. So we'll hire people that are at that level. And then typically that is supervised by someone who carries that master plumbing license. Um, well, isn't that hard to find? No, absolutely not. We had a meet the team day the other day, and a bunch of prospects asked the onboarding manager, like, well, how long does this typically take? And they're like, oh, I don't know. We usually do it in the first week. And they're like, the first week? It's like, yeah. Um, there are people out there that do this for a living. There are companies out there that pair people like our prospects with, licensed plumbers. And what you met was one of the vendors that we typically use. They're called like an RMO agency. So I tell people if you think of them like a headhunter, you're in Arizona. They met, if we were starting a franchise in Arizona, they would say, "Oh, Laura, we've got a couple of guys that we can partner you with, right? Let me hook you up." If not, they will go out and recruit and find somebody for you. They'll help you sign a contract with that person. What happens if they quit? Well, we're going to have a contract in place with them that says if we don't see eye to eye, we're going to part ways. That's fine, but we have to have a 90-day notice, to give us time to go out and backfill and replace them. So about 75% of the people that we put in this system have no trades background and use that, where we're hiring out the license holder, and it's fairly simple. And the other thing I get asked all the time is, it must be impossible to hire plumbers. And again, that you will find when you get into validation and talk to franchisees, that is not one of the larger challenges that you have in this industry. Um, we will do a lot in terms of recruitment. We run advertising that's recruitment in nature. We drive, applicants into a dedicated recruitment site. So I always tell people we will generally put, bodies in seats without any issue. Now, I'd be, misleading you if I said it's easy to hire, quality people, right? So you'll find when we hire folks, some people just aren't going to fit the bill. They're not going to meet the standard that we're looking to meet, and we're going to need to move on from them and find somebody that will meet the standard. But the actual hiring piece, believe it or not, when you talk to our startups, will tell you, no, we posted the jobs. We had, 40 applicants, 50 applicants. We hired two, and off we went. So it's actually not what a lot of people build up in their mind. The other thing I always tell people that you're talking to is for some reason, people always want to hold plumbing to a different standard, right? Well, I
Yeah.
said, well, if you owned a painting franchise or you owned a closet franchise, I mean, if your guy that does the work quits, unless you're going to go get on the ladder and paint the house, isn't it the same thing? You're just going to hire another one. So, if your licensed plumber leaves you, we're just going to hire another licensed plumber. It's really no different.
Right. Well, and trades are the place to be these days. I
Yep.
understand that the average age of a plumber these days is 56, I think I heard, or 58 last week.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of young people that are looking at the trades because it is very lucrative. Some of the numbers that I hear that journeymen can make is incredible. You can make a really, really nice living as an employee of a Benjamin Franklin.
I think the average for a plumber in the US is 57,000. Top 25% of technicians in our model are six-figure employees.
Wow.
So yes, and It was funny. I actually had one of the business channels on here on the TV yesterday, and they were talking about there's an upswing in trade schools because we got into that dynamic of everybody went to college and they all come out with $70,000 in debt and can't find a job. And the reality is half these people didn't need to go to college anyway for the degree that they were trying to pursue. And I think there was a 16% uptick in trade school attendance last year. So you're starting to see, yes, it's an aging demographic, but you're starting to see a little bit of an uptick of, hey, I can go into the trades debt free, start making money day one, and can get into a six-figure income here relatively quickly. So you are starting to see a little bit of a pivot back that direction.
And it was nice to hear from the franchisee, the general manager last week of another Authority Brands brand,
Yeah.
Mr. Sparky, that a lot of the employees have been with them for 12, 15, 16, 17 years. So the culture is definitely indicative of keeping and retaining employees and watching them grow and promoting from within, and being the next mentors for the next apprentice or journeyman that come on board with Benjamin Franklin.
100%. I get asked that question a lot. Like, why would somebody quit working for their company and come work for me? And I said, well, I don't know. Let's see. You're Benjamin Franklin Plumbing. You're one of the largest brands in the nation. Professional vehicles, wrapped, professional equipment. There's a sense of pride in that for the technicians, right? To have that versus the, beat up, unmarked van, uniformed employees. We're running advertising that keeps these trucks booked up on high income opportunities. That allows us to generate revenue where we're paying for, medical and dental and 401k plans for employees. There's generally, growth or advancement opportunities, training opportunities as the businesses scale. And I always say, is that what you think they get working for the average mom and pop? And the answer is no, absolutely not. Right. So a lot of times we're seen as like a destination job for somebody that's in the trades.
Yeah, I love that. And so, speaking of the medical and dental benefits and other things that you can provide employees, Benjamin Franklin is part of Authority Brands, and you have great rebate programs and buying power within Authority Brands that translates to Benjamin Franklin. You have your own branded items. So, if you look at the water
Yeah.
softener or the RO system under a sink, they say Benjamin Franklin if you were the ones who installed it, which I thought was super cool. So who are they going to call when there's a problem with their RO system in 10 years? They're going to call Benjamin Franklin. So talk about the
100%.
the buying power and the rebates for anybody listening who might be
Yeah.
interested in
So
Authority
that's an
Brands.
affiliate company that Authority Brands owns called Bimax. And I always tell people their job is to go out and build out the vendor network and then to essentially negotiate, pricing for the network. Everything's in there. So any type of equipment or inventory's in there. So it's your Fergusons and your A.O. Smiths and your Bradford Whites and your Home Depots of the world. You get into fleet, it's vehicles, but it's even down to things like oil changes, tires, or fuel discounts at the pump. And then on the back office, things like your employee benefits, your insurance, uniforms, cell phone plans, anything and everything you need to run the system is part of that network and always going to be at pricing below what you could just get on the street because of our volume purchasing power. And then again, one of the biggest, you mentioned it, the biggest differentiators between us and the marketplace is our private label products. You were mentioning one of the water filtration systems. So it's manufactured by Brita. It goes in the house, Ben Franklin private label. So as the owner of the business, you've got a better margin. You can't get price shopped on it. Once a year, I got to come out to your house and swap the cartridges out. So that allows you and me to build a little bit of a relationship there. So when you do have that repair need down the road, who's more likely to get the call? Me, right? Because we have the relationship from that product. But that extends out to things like electric tankless water heaters, water softening systems. I know those are big out in the Southwest. Whole home leak detection systems that you see a lot of rental properties use, garbage disposals. We'd have a retail drain cleaning solution called BioBin. I can't remember if I said electric tankless water heaters and expansion tanks for water heaters. So it's a pretty extensive product line that's definitely a differentiator between us and other plumbing companies that are in the market.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the appealing factors of why wouldn't you invest in a Benjamin Franklin franchise versus going it alone? You've got
Right,
buying
right.
power, you've got training for your employees, you've got scalability, you've got the better pricing on everything, and you have ongoing support. So talk to me a little bit about what the investment looks like with Benjamin Franklin if somebody is interested in looking and learning more about Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah, 100%. So I would say, the initial investment for just a startup in a one territory, two truck startup is just, 200,000 ballpark, give or take a little bit. Might be a little bit below that in a rural market, going to be a little bit bigger than that in a metro or in a California of the world. And when I'm giving you that number, I'm giving you all of your one-time costs, so initial franchise fee, equipment to outfit the truck, sign on the building. We're saying 3 months worth of variable expenses. So it's 3 months worth of your rent and insurance premiums and marketing and vehicle leases and things to that effect. And then somewhere generally around 60 to 90,000 in working capital, which will be some, burn rate, especially on your payroll when you're ramping up. So you kind of add all that together. Generally, you're in, say the 200 to 225,000 for a one territory, two truck startup. And then a lot of people will do two territories at startup, especially in a larger metropolitan area. It just gives you a little bit of a bigger pond to fish in. And those will tend to run in about the 250 range if you want to get a little bit more aggressive in terms of territory.
And you have pretty impressive ramp up time. So if I sign
Yeah.
my franchise agreement and I'm all in on Benjamin Franklin, walk me through the onboarding process and share with our listeners what they can expect as far as time to open.
That program is as good as I have seen. I've worked for a couple of different franchise concepts. I think that's one of the powers of being with authority brands and just kind of our scope and scale. But it takes us on average about 16 weeks to go from contract signing to running service calls. You go through a program that we call Sure Start. And the way I describe that is I just say if you pictured 150, 160 items on a task list that we have to kind of get knocked out in that 16-week period, you'll have a project manager called your Sure Start coordinator that's with you the entire 16 weeks. And you're meeting with them once a week, multiple times a week. And it's just like, hey, we're doing this step today. We're doing this step over the next 2 days. They will pull in support specialists throughout that 16 weeks. You'll have a dedicated marketing manager who will come on board, works exclusively with startups. They're going to help you with all your initial marketing, budgeting, build out, and implementation. You're going to be meeting with them on a weekly basis up to 9 months post opening, looking at inbound call traffic, conversion ratios, making modifications to things. Um, you'll have a procurement specialist that will help you with all your initial vendor setup and all your initial purchase and acquisition. There's a field support specialist. But like I said, the beauty of this team is they work exclusively with startups. So you do not get dumped into the general population and potentially lost in the shuffle. And at the end of that onboarding period, you still have all of the support. They'll transition you to a team that supports, operational franchises that are stable. But we have that bubble around our startups. And just in a nutshell, if you think of, the first couple of weeks of it, it's a lot of procurement type stuff. So find a facility, get our licensing handled, get vehicles and equipment, everything on inventory. Middle phases, we're rolling into things like competitive market research, building out price books, financial planning, marketing planning, software training. We're getting jobs posted towards the back end. We're getting our hires made. We're training. We're soft launch marketing, and then we're kind of up and out and rolling at that point. So phenomenal support structure, which is why we do so well with the non tradespeople because it's literally just follow the playbook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how simple is this? Give me 150 things I need to do, and somebody who's
Right.
going to guide me through the process. And I'm like, wait, now I'm stuck again on this licensing
Yep.
thing. And they're like, no worries, we'll have somebody by the end of the week for you. And so I'm onboarded, I'm started, my trucks are rolling, my plumbers are hired. So I'm in the business, I'm looking to scale. So what does a
Yep.
day in the life of a franchisee look like once you get everything moving and the grease is spinning those wheels
Yeah.
pretty smooth?
you see a wide range. When I say at maturity, um, we have fully absentee owners. So, I mean, sometimes what that looks like is you'll have a full-time general manager, a full-time operations manager, an office manager, a warehouse manager, a call center manager, and you're kind of sitting more in that, strategic direction position. I have a lot of, husband-wife teams that run these businesses where maybe the husband, takes one role and the wife takes one role, and they're a little bit more involved. They pay themselves versus pay other people. Um, Certainly at the revenue figures we were talking about before, you get those things scaled up. You can support a lot of infrastructure. It's definitely not a concept where you should be buying a job. We should definitely not be doing that.
Hmm.
It's startup. It's it's a lot of, I tell people it looks like a GM or ops manager role. So if you've got a couple of technicians, the big piece is going to be answering the telephones. Now we do have a call center that you can pair with. It's not a call center that takes a message. They book service calls, can access your software, and will put that right on your job board. So sometimes it's easier to just utilize the call service because now you're not having to deal with training and what happens if they quit or call in sick and benefits and things like that. So pay the call center. And then basically if you're involved in the day to day, what you're doing is kind of like a GM type role, right? So it's a lot of recruiting, interviewing, hiring, culture building, marketing oversight, P&L management. Obviously there's inventory in and out, um, and things of that effect. Ones that are trying to do it a little bit more hands off, a lot of times what you'll see is maybe an office manager out of the gate who will come in and handle, everything administrative, to kind of take some of that day-to-day minutia off the owner is typically what you see. So it's either usually an owner operator, a couple of techs, or it's an owner with, maybe like an office manager or a base level operations manager and a couple of techs at startup.
So if I'm an investor type and I'm
Yeah.
looking at franchise opportunities to build my investment portfolio, but I want to keep my full-time job and hire somebody to be a GM, is Benjamin Franklin potentially a good fit for me?
We are definitely open to that. What I when I just was on the phone with three gentlemen like this yesterday, high net worth individuals. We're looking at trying to develop something in that type of a model. What we're looking for in that situation is a general manager. Um, doesn't have to necessarily be a plumber, but in a general manager in a sense of probably I understand how to run a field service operation. Maybe they were in pest control, maybe they were in landscaping, right? But they certainly understand the type of culture or environment that we're in, and has the skill set to then implement some of that. You're still going to have to keep your hands on it pretty tight out of the gate because I always tell people that, the challenge with not just plumbing, but any service-based business is when you open it, there's no foundation, right? There's no processes, procedures, checks, balances. There's no train track. If you open an Orange Theory Fitness, we got four walls and equipment.
Hmm.
I've got a foundation. So even with a general manager, we're going to need to keep our fingers on them to make sure that they are instilling the systems properly so that then we're comfortable with, managing the analytics. And in an ideal scenario, we'd find that person very early and have them participate all the way through onboarding and training with us. But we're open to it. Certainly changes the initial investment a little bit because you're talking about a salary of somebody, that could handle that type of a task is certainly going to be probably, in the six figures and up range.
Well, certainly.
Yep.
So thank you for that. So I do a lot of territory checks for Benjamin Franklin, and
Yeah.
you are a popular brand because you've been around for what since for 25 years almost. So
Yep.
what are some of your hot
2001. Yeah.
markets?
Yeah, so people ask me sometimes when they hear about a hot market and they go, "What's wrong with my market?" And I tell people, "There's nothing wrong
Okay.
with your market. This company was founded in 2001, and you cannot develop the entire United States in 24 years, right?
Yes.
So we will be there probably sooner rather than later, but there's still a lot of really good undeveloped parts of the country. If we're looking, I'm going to start West Coast. Um, the entire state of Oregon. So Portland is certainly wide open and available. Boise, Salt Lake. If you get into California, there's pockets of Los Angeles that are very good. San Diego, Sacramento would be some availability. Albuquerque, New Mexico. come through the middle of the U.S., St. Louis, Lexington, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, El Paso, Texas would be some prime markets. If we went over on the East Coast, Boston, believe it or not, wide open. Newport, no, Norfolk, Newport News, Virginia, Savannah, Georgia, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Columbia, South Carolina. There's a ton more. These are just ones I'm just rattling off the top of my head here.
So we get the idea. There's still a lot of
Yeah,
availability.
those are wide open.
There's
Like you'd be the
lots.
first one in, wide open. Yeah.
Yeah. So give me a call if you're interested in Benjamin
Give me a
Franklin, and
call
I'll
if you're
work.
interested. We'll talk, right? There's availabilities in other markets too. It's just you may be the second one in versus the first one in. But in a big city, it's very common for us to have, like right there in Phoenix, the city's literally split down the middle. You have one franchise services the western half of the Metroplex, and one person services the eastern. So in a big metro like that, it's common for us to have multiple people in a market.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's start with what is the power behind Benjamin Franklin, and then we're going to move to what's the power behind Authority Brands.
So Ben Franklin, I always tell people if you remember your fifth grade history, he was not a plumber. He was the guy that was famous for the saying time is money.
Mm,
And so that's why they built the brand behind him was there were some surveys done and it came back as the number one pain point a consumer has is, time. Oh goodness, I've scheduled a plumbing service call. I'm taking off from work and I'm sitting here at the house and I've been sitting here for 4 hours and nobody's called, nobody's showed up. Everybody's had that experience, right?
yes.
So Benjamin Franklin, the punctual plumber, if there's any delay, it's you we pay. Back to that punctuality guarantee, or we'll refund you money. And then the ability to differentiate. So if you think a lot of the bigger plumbing companies that exist, Rooter Man, Rescue Rooter, Rotor Rooter, Mr. Rooter, A Rooter Man, all using red and blue logos. Very difficult for those guys to carve out a differentiator in their market. But Ben Franklin, you're not the guy on the screen there. You are not gonna forget that face holding a giant pipe wrench. So we stick out like a sore thumb, and we're the only ones really attacking that punctuality piece. So that's kind of the power behind the brand and why we are as large as we are in that space. Um, yeah,
And what's the power behind Authority Brands?
the cool thing about Authority Brands is we own 15 home service concepts. And if you forced me to name all 15 right now, I could get close, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'd probably forget one. But you've probably heard of, most all of them because they're very large brands and they're very complementary of each other. Meaning, hey, if I own a Ben Franklin Plumbing, I need to know the 1 hour heating and air guy and the Mr. Sparky Electric guy because there are cross promotional opportunities there, right? America's Swimming Pool, they need plumbers when they're putting swimming pools in. The Cleaning Authority, that's housekeepers and maids in houses. Guess who comes across plumbing problems when they're cleaning houses, right? So there's the power of the network and the cross branding and promotional opportunities there. But then the other thing is when you're as large as we are and you're backed by a private equity firm, that allows them to invest money into scaling these companies. So that affiliate company Bimax, as a result of that size and scale, that affiliate company Success Academy is a result of that size and scale. The fact that we got into private label products, that's all a result of after Authority Brands purchased Ben Franklin and private equity came in and said, hey, how do we make this thing, grow? Okay, let's get after it this way. So it's just having that network behind you and that size and scale that can support these franchises.
I love it. Yes. And just seeing firsthand, I've met with at the Authority Brands headquarters before in Maryland. I've seen the trades in action. I see you driving down, I call them franchises in the wild when they're driving down the road to an
Right,
appointment.
right.
So, yeah, definitely some power behind all of those brands. So, Tommy, what has you most excited about the future of franchising?
So the future of franchising. So first of all, I'm really excited about the future of this brand because all those cities that I rolled off, I would love to be able to say we don't have any more availability, to feel like we've developed this brand to become where everybody in the United States says, "Oh, Benjamin Franklin Plumbing, yes, like I've got that guy down the street," right? So take a lot of pride in the fact that, we just opened in Wisconsin and we just opened in Kentucky, right? So I'm excited about the future of this brand. But then within Authority Brands, they're constantly pushing the envelope there in terms of, adding complementary brands. And I'd say we add a couple every year that just, support these, and then we're able to develop those. So I think Authority Brands is also probably just scratching the surface of what does that look like 10 or 15 years down the road. So to being 15 brands, it's probably 20 or 25. And then how do we develop that, to complement the ones that already exist? So that's probably what I'm most excited about is just Authority Brand's only been around. I don't remember, Laura, what they bought this in 2018 or 2019. So I mean, Authority Brands as it exists, as 15 companies under one umbrella with this private equity backing is relatively new. It's in its infancy. So really excited about what I'd say the next 10 to 20 years holds for just us as a group.
Yes, we got a little like peel back just a smidge of the curtain last week that you're looking at 4 different brands to bring on board. You might not bring all of them on board, but definitely some
Yep.
things that are complementary to Benjamin Franklin Plumbing and the other brands that are part of Authority Brands. So more to be revealed
More
soon.
to be revealed. They won't tell us either. I think it gets them in trouble with
Uh, yes, well, you got to wait till the
the
ink's dry.
attorneys. Yes.
Well, Tommy, it's been an absolute joy to have you on the Powered by Franchising podcast today. And yeah, anybody who is interested in learning more about becoming a franchisee of Benjamin Franklin, please schedule time with me. I'd love to chat with you about some of the stories that Tommy and I have shared in our travels together at the National FranServe Convention and at a Friendship opportunity earlier this year. Love to get you introduced to Tommy and open up a Benjamin Franklin Plumbing in your neck of the woods. Thanks again, Tommy.
My pleasure.